I just sort of blanked on what I'm supposed to say. Right. We're here at WindTV Studios, and we're conducting interviews live from the IPF show floor. I'm Tim Queenie from Professional Mariner magazine, and we are partnering with the Business Network for Offshore Wind to bring you these one-on-one interviews with offshore wind industry leaders. And today we have George Sassine, who is Vice President, Large-Scale Renewables, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thanks you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
George, can you share what NYSERDA is and what role the agency plays in the development of offshore wind generation?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can think of NYSERDA as the equivalent of the Clean Energy Agency for the state of New York, or the Department of Energy for the state of New York. Mm-hmm. And we play a very central role in the development of the offshore wind industry here in the state. We do everything from procuring the offshore wind generation to building the supply chain around offshore wind to make sure that these projects get built and we have the equipments to build them, and creating jobs in New York. We make sure that the transmission and the grid for offshore wind is built. And we make sure that we have the talent and the workforce and the engineers and the construction workers needed to actually build these projects and bring them to life. So We do it from start to finish, and once we award these projects, we also have a team that goes and make sure that these projects do get built, and we help with make sure tracking the projects and the contracts over more than 25 years of the life of the contracts for these projects. So we just do it all, and we're the key catalyzer behind the industry, and we have very big ambitions for offshore wind in New York, and we'll make sure that we achieve these large goals.
And what are some of the projects you're working on right now?
So listen, New York, with regards to offshore wind, New York has like the most active and the biggest pipeline of projects being built live as we speak. We have 4.3 gigawatts of projects. It's 5 projects are being built by some of the most sophisticated offshore wind companies in the world that have been attracted and want to do business here in the U.S. and in New York specifically. And we're very excited. So 4.3 gigawatts of offshore wind projects being built as we speak off the coast of New York.
Great. State law mandates that at least 70% of New York's electricity come from renewable energy sources by 2030, and calls for the development of 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind energy by 2035. How on track is New York to achieving this goal?
Listen, first of all, just a quick second on my role. So I cover basically all the large-scale renewable developments in New York. So that includes offshore wind, onshore solar, transmission projects, large storage projects, etc. So that's what my team is mandated on doing. And I don't know if the mic is still working.
I think we may have the sound.
Oh, good.
So good.
So basically, our pipeline of projects across the full large-scale renewable portfolio, whether it's solar, wind, on land, or offshore wind, when you put it all together, we have a pipeline of contracts that get us to 66% of renewables by 2030 if these projects get built on time. So this is where we are. With regards to offshore wind, we're more than halfway to reaching the goal. We're at 4.3 gigawatts out of the 9 by 2035, and we have a solicitation on the street, which we're expected to announce awards in the next couple months. We're going to be awarding at least another 2 gigawatts of offshore wind, so we'll get us even closer to achieving the 9 gigawatt goal.
Great. New York just began its second offshore wind planning process called Deep Water. Can you share what the goals of this planning process is, and can you share the lessons learned or successes from the first planning process?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, these planning processes for offshore wind are the bedrock of everything you're seeing in the industry today. So when we first did this back in 2014, it led to all these projects we're talking about now, right? Like the lease areas being defined with the federal government, attracting all these different companies to come and build these projects and signing contracts with us. So it's really basically the foundation to kickstarting the industry. And what's been critical in the first round has been really stakeholder engagement and getting different communities, different stakeholders really engaged in the planning process early on to help us set up the industry and have them adopt the industry as their own. And it's been very critical. So what we're doing now is we've kickstarted the second round, which is going to look into deeper waters off the coast of New York beyond 60 meters. And basically what that would unlock would be eventually a set of new lease areas that would be defined and most likely might require new floating offshore wind technology. So our goal in the master plan 2.0, that's what we're calling it, is to have a very smooth transition from building fixed bottom offshore wind to floating and enabling that, the expansion of our goals beyond 9 gigawatts by 2035.
I see. So definitely some floating in the future.
Not definitely, but that's the whole point of doing this master plan 2.0 is really assessing, the opportunity and the risks with it to help figure out how does New York go deeper into its waters.
Does New York have, because doesn't it have more because of Long Island, doesn't it have more shallow water capability?
We do, and this is what the first master plan analyzed, and this is what these are the awards, the projects we're awarding are in shallower waters. But now we're kickstarting the process to look into deeper waters to see if we can expand further than this.
New York's recent solicitation round 3, has made headlines for the amount of bids, the size of the bids, and the associated economic development, including 2 different blade facilities. What made New York so attractive to developers?
Listen, I think what we saw in New York in this last round is historical, frankly, for the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
In the U.S. so far, we haven't seen that level of competition and interest until this, what we call New York 3 solicitation. It's really been very inspiring and encouraging to see that level of interest. We received more than 100 proposals. When you compare, this is like 10x more than the amount of proposals we received 2 years ago. It's
Wow.
really phenomenal. And I think the success is really comes down to a handful of things. Number one, we have large targets. It's big demand for offshore wind in New York. 9 gigawatts by 2035 is one of the largest goals, the most ambitious goals in the U.S. So scale is important, especially for offshore wind.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is certainty, policy certainty. We run procurements on a regular cadence every 2 years. So developers and the private sector, know what to expect with regards to scale and certainty, market certainty. And the other piece is clarity, right? So when we've designed our RFPs in a very thoughtful way, where we're very clear on what we want, what we're looking for, which provides very clear guidance for developers and the private sector to be able to meet our needs. So I think these 3 things together, so size and scale, certainty of demand and policy, and clarity of how the RFPs are designed have been critical. And then I add one last piece. You did mention supply chain, which is a critical part of these RFPs. What New York has done is we've put down $500 million to be co-investing with the private sector to build the offshore wind supply chain and turn New York into the offshore wind supply chain hub in the U.S. So, putting real dollars on the table that can make a difference and are attracting the private sector, I think, has made also a very big difference.
I see. If everything goes as projected, offshore wind energy is poised to become a major source of renewable power for New York. The state is well on its way to developing the let's call it gigawatts. It's 9,000 megawatts here, but let's call it 9 gigawatts.
Yeah.
It's easier. Offshore wind energy by 2035, although to power up to 6 million homes.
Yeah.
Bring us up to speed on what projects are currently underway and which are in the hopper. I guess we sort of did that, but let's go over.
But just to tell you something real quick. So we have 5 projects being developed as we speak. We're very excited. The very first project, called South Fork Wind, is going to come online and be operational in New York waters by the end of this year. So that would be the very first project in New York that we're going to be seeing. It's very exciting. And then we have a series of projects that are coming one after the other. We've been sequencing our RFPs in a way that also the construction of projects that would come online also would be sequenced in a regular cadence. So very excited to not only talk about goals and how ambitious we are, but also seeing real projects in the water, right? So I'm pretty excited about that.
The Inflation Reduction Act will give the U.S. market long-term tax certainty, and the federal government is working to alleviate permitting concerns. What do you think are the biggest barriers to growth in the U.S. market?
Well, listen, it's a great question. It's a new industry that we're starting from scratch here, and a lot of us are learning from each other, and a lot of states are really comparing best practices, and we're all evolving and learning from each other. So I think that collaboration has been really critical in helping us all evolve together in tandem. Because at the end of the day, it's not only a New York market or a New Jersey market or a Maine or Massachusetts market or California market, it's the U.S. market, right? So we need to be able to attract, there's a lot of competition all over the world over offshore wind, and it's a very tight supply chain. So in order for us to attract the private sector to come and do business here, we have to aggregate our markets, and again, scale is paramount here. But to go back to the issue about the Inflation Reduction Act, it's really been phenomenal and very much needed to advancing the industry. And all of us, I think it's at this point where we're all sounding like a broken record, but we need guidance from the IRS and the federal government on a lot of these items. But I reiterate the core message that the states and the industry together have been aligning on, which is we need IRS guidance ASAP to get clarity, especially with the the RFPs that we have on the streets, right? Like we need more certainty right now, like maybe today or tomorrow, so that it would make a big difference on how these projects get.
Could you just elaborate a little bit more on what the IRS what that guidance would be?
No, absolutely. I think there's a couple items within the IRA guidance that's uncertain and unclear on how it would apply or not apply to offshore wind specifically. Some of them are with regards to the requirement of using iron and steel from the U.S. How much for what would need to be used to be able to qualify for additional incentives. That makes a very big difference, whether it's having to source 100% of the iron and steel, which would be extremely challenging to do this in the U.S. in this current market to qualify, or would there be more leeway to be able to qualify for these incentives? And these incentives are really pretty hefty and could make a significant difference in the economics of these projects. So that's just one of many examples of the need of clarity that could make a very significant change for a lot of the projects moving forward.
And what are your expectations for the coming year?
Great question. Listen, offshore wind transmission. In New York, we've been heavily focusing on doing proactive transmission planning. New Jersey has done a great job in launching an RFP specifically for transmission. This is something we haven't really done in the U.S. much of, but NYSERDA has been heavily advocating for the launch of what we call an offshore wind transmission RFP competitive process through the FERC 1000 process that would basically look at both the offshore grid and the onshore grid and putting like a holistic offshore and onshore solution together to build that grid. So without building the offshore grid, I think a lot of these offshore wind projects would have a hard time coming online. So this is something we're heavily focused on and prioritizing right now.
So the idea being that once the projects get built, they'll be able to be connected to the grid immediately, and there'll be no backlog.
Yeah, and having like a more thoughtful transmission planning process instead of having each project connect directly what's best for them, but it may not be what's best for the network.
Right.
So that's one piece. The other piece that's really critical for us is building the supply chain for offshore wind in New York. So we have a couple other RFPs that we're going to be launching over the next few months, specifically dedicated for offshore wind supply chain. So we have a couple $100 million that we'll be allocating just for that. So I hope we're rallying the industry to be participating heavily in these upcoming RFPs in the next few months.
Well, George, thank you for joining us and sharing New York State Energy Research and Development's insights. Stay tuned for more WindTV interviews today.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We're here at WindTV Studios conducting live interviews from the IPF show floor. My name's Tim Queenie, and I'm from Professional Mariner magazine. And we are partnering with the Business Network for Offshore Wind to bring you these one-on-one interviews with offshore wind industry leaders. And right now we have Alana Russo, who's Director of Strategic Engagement for National Grid. Hi, Alana.
Hi.
So we spoke earlier with Doug Perkins, President of Community Offshore Wind, which is a joint venture between National Grid and RWE Renewables in developing the massive wind farm off of the New York Bight. How would you describe the working relationship and dynamic?
Yeah, we have an amazing relationship, really do, really lucky in our joint venture. And since our inception in 2021, we've really touted our complementary capabilities. RWE is a world leader in offshore wind with over 18 successful projects and growing. And with National Grid, we're a leader in our subsea interconnectors in the UK and also the local utility in the Northeast.
And so what about that for that particular project in particular? How's the dynamic working in that partnership?
Yeah, it's working really well. So each of our work packages have integrated teams. So there's members from both RWE Renewables as well as National Grid Ventures that mix. So we're really pulling out the best experts and the best capabilities to build out our project. What's unique, I think, with us is we are going to be taking next week a few of our National Grid generation employees and send them over to an RWE facility in the UK so that they can share knowledge, learn best practices, and continue to grow our workforce here in the US already. So really building on those type of capabilities to differentiate ourselves a little bit than others and keeping some jobs here in the US.
Great. In January, the Community Offshore Wind Consortium submitted a proposal to the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, it's easier to say it that way,
Yes.
to provide New York State with clean energy from 1.3 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity. This is a long question. The bid submission was in response to New York's third competitive offshore wind solicitation, adding to their current portfolio of 5 offshore wind projects. Any word on the status of the proposal?
No, NYSERDA has not made their decision yet.
Okay.
Although we're anxiously awaiting, but we're really excited about what we submitted. So 1.3 gigawatts, our lease area was the largest in the New York Bight, with a capability for over 3 gigawatts. Within our proposal, we submitted a proposed 4,600 jobs, we'd want to prioritize those jobs to be using the union workforce, target disadvantaged communities, further the supply chain as well. We have some really great economic benefits that we looped into our proposal, over 15 billion proposed economic benefits, as well as over $100 million for workforce development, training. A special initiative to me is our childcare initiative. So over $10 million targeted for childcare. And that would go for anyone who's looking to train in offshore wind or who has a job in offshore wind that needs that extra help. As a mother, it's important to me because I know how the burden can be with childcare, making sure that your children are in a safe place and taken care of while you're at work all day. So really excited for some of our benefits like that are looped into our proposal.
National Grid is unique as a utility and a developer. What lessons do we take from both of those places?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And I really think what sets us apart as National Grid is in the Northeast, we have over 1 million customers. I'm sorry, over 10 million, 100 million customers. So already working with the customers across the Northeast with our electric distribution and our gas distribution, and taking that knowledge of our stakeholder engagement, working in the communities that we're already living in and serving, and bringing that to the renewable energy sector. So this is our first project that we're owning, developing, and going to be operating in offshore wind. But we do have a vision for fossil-free by 2050, and that includes green hydrogen, solar, offshore wind, onshore wind, and more battery storage. So it's taking all of these elements and looping it together, I think sets us apart and makes us a really unique company.
Offshore wind strength comes in part from the strong public support. What does National Grid and the industry do to foster that trust in the community?
So National Grid has been in the community for generations, decades through our legacy companies. And we do have a very strong community presence already between economic development, workforce training. We have a Project C initiative in New York State that's been very successful. And we've brought those community-minded pieces to community offshore wind as well. Since we won our lease area last February, we've been in the communities across New York State from the beginning. And we're going to continue to do that. When we submitted our proposal to NYSERDA back in January, we had dozens of letters of support. And we can't be where we are today and how well we developed our project without that support. And it's a partnership, even being here at IPF, right? It's so great to be working together, to be meeting other developers, suppliers, manufacturers, learning from each other. And we're going to be building the industry for the future. So it's very exciting.
So that community support is part of your whole reason.
I mean, it's in our name for Community Offshore Wind for that reason, because we know how important the community is, and it's been essential in developing our project.
So the Inflation Reduction Act will give the U.S. market long-term tax certainty, and the federal government is working to alleviate permitting concerns. What do you think the largest barriers to growth in the U.S. market are?
Sure. So, some barriers are, not having necessarily all the localization that we need right now. But I think that we're doing as a collective of all the developers and the manufacturer suppliers working together to bring items more local and investing. And with certain solicitations, such as NYSERDA is looking into supply chain investment plans, and those will help make that change and that shift.
And when you say localization, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So here in the U.S., we don't have a robust supply chain yet. And what's been very important for us exclusively at National Grid and in our project Community Offshore Wind has been looking to see how we can expand that, how we can work with even minority-owned businesses, women-owned business, veteran-owned businesses, and build that supply chain, finding the similarities. So you may be producing something that can transfer over to offshore wind. So trying to find those connections, remove some barriers, and then bring that into our current manufacturing and supply chain piece.
And what are your expectations for the coming year?
That we win our proposal with NYSERDA, number one. We're also looking in New Jersey as well. So the BPU has their solicitation out right now, which will be due in June. So we're excited to be working with them and looking to see what we can bring to New Jersey as well. So growing our portfolio in the Northeast.
Well, Alana, thank you for joining us and sharing National Grid's insights.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And stay tuned to WindTV for more interviews today.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Si j'ai quitté le Rosta, ok, c'était pour ça. Salut tout le monde. Salut tout le monde.
Times I'm thinking nothing, there's something that I feel. Silence is a reason, it's what you know. Moving all around me, taking time to live. Silence is a reason, it's where you go, 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 go. Trying, seeing without words, believing what you're saying, it's what you know. Being here together, walking through the night, silence is a reason, it's where you go. So out of time, things that move this way. Gone out of reason, it's where you go. So out of time, things that move this way. Gone out of line, you never have to stay.
We're here at WindTV Studios. We're conducting live interviews from the IPF show floor. I'm Tim Queenie from Professional Mariner magazine, and we are collaborating with the Business Network for Offshore Wind in producing these one-on-one videos with offshore wind industry leaders. And right now we have Jennifer Daniels, who is Development Director, Atlantic Shores Offshore Winds. Thanks for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Atlantic Offshore, this is a long question. Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind is a 50-50 joint venture between EDF Renewables and Shell Energies. It was formed in December 2018 to co-develop nearly 183,000 acres of leased sea area within the New Jersey wind energy area. How is the project developing, and how does a modern partnership between two large majors come together like this?
Well, we are now not just 183,000 acres, we're 260,000 acres in the mid-Atlantic, so over 400 square miles of development. And our first project is a 1,510 megawatt project. It's the third largest in the country, and it's the largest in New Jersey. And we are steadily moving, Project One through our regulatory process. We have made some key agreements with key suppliers for foundations and turbines, and we're here at the Business Network working with more suppliers to kind of finalize those contracts so that we can move into our planned construction phase, which is 2024, 2025.
Oh, that's great.
And in terms of Atlantic Shores being a 50-50 joint venture, I mean, I do feel really fortunate because EDF, Shell, two powerhouses in energy, pun totally intended. You know, EDF is one of the largest renewable energy companies in the United States. Shell, you know, Shell is just a household name and has so much experience with energy offshore. And both EDF and Shell have a tremendous portfolio in Europe of offshore wind development, construction, and operation. So at Atlantic Shores, we just have the opportunity to pull from all of that wonderful experience and resources and people to create, you know, our first large project here in the United States and expand our portfolio that will be more than 5 gigawatts. I think what's really unique about Atlantic Shores and our partnership between EDF and Shell, it's not just about bringing people from Shell and EDF to work together on a project. Our parents really gave us, as the executive team, a directive to create an organization with a unique vision, mission, and objective, and to really create our own culture of how we would want to support and bring forward this new industry. And so at Atlantic Shores, we really feel fortunate, and that's how our JV has come together. And if you ask anybody from our team, they're not going to tell you, I work for EDF and I'm seconded into a joint venture called Atlantic Shores. They will proudly stand up and say, we are Atlantic Shores.
That's great. Well, how did you manage to get these heavyweights on your team?
A heavyweight, I mean, I think our portfolio speaks for itself, and the reputation of our company speaks for itself. I mean, we do exciting, fun, groundbreaking things, and we're here not because it's easy and the same old thing. We do it because it's hard, it's exciting, and we really, everyone who wants to be part of that really new energy transition that is so important for future generations and combating the effects of climate change.
And if it was easy, anybody would do it, right?
Yeah, right.
New Jersey has notably asked project developers to utilize the state's wind port and now to use the state's preferred transmission route. For a developer, does state preferences like this provide overall project certainty or heartburn?
Well, I've been in the industry a long time. I've actually was here at the first IPF when it was like 30 people in a hotel room out on the harbor. And there's a lot of things about this industry that has caused me heartburn over the years. This is not one of them.
Okay.
You know, New Jersey has the largest renewable energy target in the country, 11 gigs. It's unbelievable, unprecedented. And, you know, they're not just paying lip service, right? So they've created a port infrastructure that the state is investing in. They have created a hub where offshore wind will be directed to plug in, and they're investing in that. Transmission is probably one of the hardest things for us as developers. We know we can create the power, but it's how do we get to the power to shore and to the people that need it. And so New Jersey has made that commitment, and it really does signal that they're just not giving lip service to this target, but they're actually investing in creating a pathway and the infrastructure that will help support its launch. Where we have to be careful is that these directives don't start limiting optionality as we go forward. But in the nascent industry, setting foundations and targets like this and directives is helpful and provides certainty.
And for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the wind port? Where is that, and what is it?
It's in New Jersey wind ports. It's at Paulsboro, and they are going to be there where we're going to be marshaling our projects back and forth.
Right. So around the end of the year, Atlantic Shores announced a monopile contract with EEW that will allow the Paulsboro monopile facility to expand and become a full-service facility. How important is that kind of announcement for the industry, your project, and the state of New Jersey?
Well, like I said, I've been in this industry for a long time, and we've talked so much about the potential for offshore wind, the potential it would bring for clean energy, the potential for manufacturing, the potential for jobs. And we've just been talking about it, right? We have now put pen to paper and made a commitment to make it happen. I mean, we are investing in that port. We're investing in that facility. And just for Project One and that first investment that Atlantic Shores is making, I mean, we are guaranteed 500 family sustaining, well-paid jobs in the state of New Jersey. And that's just one component that we're going to be bringing forward. So I really think it signals that, we're not talking about it, we're here. We're making investments, we're making it happen, we're putting roots down.
That's great. New Jersey has been ground zero for some of the concentrated opposition to offshore wind. How does the Atlantic Shores work with the community to build support and counter disinformation campaigns?
Yeah, I think Atlantic Shores, we have some really, 4 core values, and 2 of them is to be a really good neighbor, and to be good stewards of our environment, and to lead with science. And so our goal is to be transparent and open. We have community liaison offices, industry liaison officers, fisheries industry reps, all up and down the coast, not just to tell people about our project and what we're doing, but to allow them to ask us questions, voice their concerns. And we really take that to heart. And we've been able to partner with some of the leading scientific communities and universities in New Jersey and across the globe to make sure that we're bringing the right information, the right science to answer some of those questions and combat some of that misinformation. And we're not just using it to design our projects, but we're also taking that data and science and information to support kind of a broader understanding of what offshore wind means, how the environment is being infected, and how we all can come together to make it helpful. So for us, it's about really sharing, open communication, being transparent, and providing access to our people and the science that we're doing. It's unfortunate. I think renewable energy and then nowadays misinformation campaigns is kind of a thing, right? We've always had to combat it. And, it's really, if you think about it though, 7 out of 10 voters, based on the recent polling, support wind, support the expansion of offshore wind. And we are seeing like 63% of people are in favor of wind overall. And so we have just a small minority, I would say, of people that are really shouting. And it's unfortunate that when 80% of the information on Facebook about offshore wind is incorrect, what this signals to me with all of these people that support wind and want wind, we want to empower you. It's like I'm calling you to action. In particular, the people in this room that are so dedicated and have been so dedicated and want to anchor the industry here, is to come out, talk about the benefits. We have enough people, enough brain power, and enough understanding and knowledge about the benefits this industry will bring to jobs, manufacturing, climate change, that we can combat that 80%. We can dampen that down, and we can, I think, with a little help from here, we can do it.
And some of that involves reaching out to some of the opposition has been the recreational commercial fishing industry. Is there a specific message you have for them?
Well, I think I'm very proud of the work that Atlantic Shores has been done with the fishing industry. Even before we knew we were going to secure a lease, or we were looking to secure a lease, we were out in front, talking to them, understanding them. We really worked with them from the beginning, data and science driven. We asked them to tell us how they fish, where they fish, what they want to do, what their preference would be for how to interact with us and coexist offshore. So they helped us support the layout of our project. We've had a lot of them involved in some of that science and acquisition. They've been supporting some of our surveys and vessels at their ports. And we really look forward to partnering with them moving forward as we move to construction. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And like I said, we don't want to prevent the industry. I'm a fisheries biologist by training. And so it's really important for us that we strike the right balance so that we can both coexist and be successful in our industries.
So you can at least talk fish with them one-on-one.
Yes, and delicious too, right?
Delicious, exactly. So the Inflation Reduction Act will give the U.S. market long-term tax certainty, and the federal government is working to alleviate permitting concerns. What do you think are the biggest barriers to growth in the U.S. industry?
Well, we're kind of at a perfect storm right now with inflation, cost of capital, coming out of COVID. So I do think we have some hurdles to get through there in terms of making sure that we can move these projects forward in an economically feasible way. So we're working through that. But I think what we have to do is just keep the momentum going, right? It's like events like this, commitments we're making to the industry early, setting up those key supply agreements, those key things just to keep the momentum going. I think we're the train has left the station. We're going. We have to keep the pedal to the metal. I mean, BOEM has done a great job at leasing more to create the pipeline. Now we got to take those projects and push the projects through that pipeline to get them moving.
And what about the whole supply chain issue that people are mentioning, that Europe has a wind industry and it's growing and burgeoning here? How is that affecting the supply chain for projects like you guys are doing?
It's certainly competitive, right? So we are competing with folks that are moving a little bit faster than we are. So I think the proof will be in the pudding in the next couple of years of determining on how we get these projects approved and moving through the regulatory process so that we can set up that supply chain certainty. Because, you know, if we see continued delays in getting these projects through the regulatory process, I mean, we're going to lose those opportunities, those slots to not other projects here in the U.S., at least from Atlantic Shore's perspective, but globally. So it's about, I think, making sure that we have certainty in the timeline, schedule, and transparency of how we're going to get there.
And what's your plan for when will you guys start actual construction?
We're rushing towards 2024, 2025.
Okay, great. And finally, what are your expectations for the coming year?
We have a busy year. Like I said, we are trying to bring in all our final suppliers to kind of get our project ready for construction. We're pushing through the regulatory process in the next several weeks. A few weeks, we hope to see our draft environmental impact statement, not only for Project 1, Project 2. There's some exciting Mid-Atlantic bid opportunities that we're exploring. So we're hoping to be able to not only deliver on our first project, but get some more contracts in for our second, third, and fourth project.
So you're looking for a busy year.
We're going to have a busy, fantastic year.
Well, that's great. Jennifer, thanks for joining us and sharing Atlantic Shore's insights. And stay tuned to WindTV for more interviews today.
Thanks so much.
Quand t'avais l'air. Quand t'allais à Paris. Si j'ai kiffé l'Eurostar. Je serai à Paris. Ok, c'était pour ça. Salut tout le monde. Salut tout le monde.